This past Mother's Day was my 18-year anniversary of walking out of the hospital after a successful bone marrow transplant. And here's the thing. When I was going through that whole experience, and I'll talk a little bit about it, I had no idea that you all even existed. But because of what you do, my doctors, the nurses, the radiologists, all those other healthcare professionals could do what they could do. Wow. And that's priceless. And I realize that you're not on the front line, because how many work with patients on a day-to-day basis? But how many of you benefit a patient on a day-to-day basis? So hopefully, part of me sharing my story today, some of the lessons I learned, is just to give a face to the patients that you make a difference each and every single day. How amazing is that? Knowing that, I think that's one of the essence of life, to know that you're making a difference in the life of someone else. How many are familiar with the bone marrow transplant? Okay, a couple of you are. So basically, they have to wipe out your immune system. And so my donor was from Massachusetts, and he has no allergies. So now I don't have any allergies. So I tell people, if you have really bad allergies, you might want to consider the bone marrow transplant. I was like, wow, this is awesome. So in order to wipe out the immune system, full body radiation, high dose chemotherapy. And I'm originally from Kansas, so I received it at KU Medical Center, downtown Kansas City, Kansas. And I had never been so sick. I was at the point, I don't know if anyone's ever been there before, about ready to quit, to give up. I didn't know if I could go one more day. But what made all the difference was Nurse Margot. Because every single morning she walked into my room with a smile. And that very simple thing. Because how many agree a smile can be a very simple thing? 18 years ago, I still remember it. But that smile gave me the inspiration, gave me the motivation, gave me the encouragement to go one more day. Curious, how many in this room manage other people or lead other people? Every single day, this opportunity to, what I say, to make a positive imprint upon their life. One of my favorite books when it comes to management leadership, has anyone ever read or heard of the carrot principle? The carrot principle? It was written a few years, probably about a decade ago, but it asked the question, how do you engage employees? What's the number one way to engage others? Anyone want to guess what the premise was, what they found? Or in your own experience, what's the number one way that you're able to engage, to empower, to motivate employees, or those you lead? Yes, sir. Oh, wow. Now that can become somewhat scary, perhaps, for some people, right? Well, I like that. Opportunity to create their own path. And feel free, if you're watching on home, feel free to put in the chat if you have any questions or comments. You're part of this hybrid presentation. So other people, how do you engage employees? Yes, that was what the book found. The number one thing people crave the most is appreciation. And they did a survey of American workers. And from the survey they did, I forgot the actual stats, but the majority of stats, I don't want to misquote it, the majority of people did not receive one word of encouragement or appreciation in the previous year. Think about that. But think about how easy it is, at least I am sometimes. Is it easier to be negative or positive? See, there's this thing, I studied positive psychology, and positive psychology was a term coined by Dr. Martin Siegelman, University of Pennsylvania. And positive psychology studies what makes people fulfilled, what makes people happy, what makes people successful. Now, if you're taking notes, if not, no worries, but this is worth writing down. Life-changing thing for my life. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your questions. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your questions. You see, one thing the research found in positive psychology is this thing called a negativity bias. And the negativity bias is how the mind, biologically, evolutionary, is wired to seek out the threats in environments. And the cause of this is that the majority of people, up to 80% of their thoughts are negative. Now, here's an interesting thing. When I was diagnosed with cancer, 2002, the number one most popular TV show in the world, anyone want to guess? Think back to 2002. The number one most popular TV show in the world. Great guess. It was up there, not number one, but close. This is the whole world, but very close. That's a great guess. Yeah, it was super popular then. It was actually, what's that? Good guess. Up there, it was actually a talk show. It's number one in the world. Not Oprah, it was a gentleman. Yes, the Jerry Springer Show. How many have seen this show? Has anyone been on it? Number one show in the whole world. So I'm thinking, man, what do people think about Americans, right? They're watching this show, right? But why is that? Have you ever been driving, there's a wreck on the other side of the highway? And what happens to the highway? The side of the highway, there's no wreck. What happens? Slows down. Why? Yeah, right? We have this thing, but it goes back evolutionary, biologically. When you're being chased by a saber-toothed lion, you can't be like super positive, like, oh, nice little kitty. But let me ask you this. How many of you, or how many of the people you lead or manage have been chased by a saber-toothed lion lately? Or tiger? Were they lions or tigers? Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. But how often do we create the fear, we create the negativity in our own minds? You see, I believe the biggest challenge that you will face, I will face, any of the people you lead will face, are the limiting beliefs, negative self-talk, self-defeating inner dialogue. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your questions. And I think so many people were caught in this cycle, this downward cycle. All we focused on so often are the problems. Most powerful computer we have is what? Brain. We ask Siri, we ask, what's the other thing? You to become what I call a solutionist. And a solutionist is someone who's solution-oriented, not problem-focused. Because that's what the world's looking for, isn't it? We're tired of all the problems. You see, I think unfortunately, there's so many so-called leaders and they get caught in this trap of blaming other people. Let me give you an example. Any race car fans in the room? Like Formula One, NASCAR? All right, Formula One or NASCAR? Okay, yeah, I can see you very sophisticated. You look like a Formula One guy, right? No offense. Well, you're the only one, so forget that example. So let me try this one. Try to get more in the room, maybe online. No one ever, I don't know. I'm from Kansas. You know, NASCAR's a thing. Okay, how do you like to drive fast? Okay, there we go. Now we get more of the room. So California, I used to live in California, they have these race car driving schools. And what they teach you is when you spin out of control, you don't focus on the wall. You focus where you want to go on the track. Because where you focus is where you go. And how many people, once again, that negativity biased, are focusing on the wall? You ask the majority of people, what do you want in life? They'll tell you what they don't want. So I really believe this, and I think you probably would agree. When you're in a leadership management role, it's an extra responsibility. It's a privileged position, an opportunity to make so much impact and difference. And myself, I begin to really examine what does it mean to be a person of character. person of integrity. Because I think we've happened so often in the last few years, so many of our leaders, I don't know if we can look to them for high integrity. But just think, the difference, each one of you, like a Nurse Margot, a smile. See, every day we have the opportunity, we can make a positive imprint. So once again, I want to encourage you to become a solutionist. And it happens by asking this question, very simple. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your questions. The question is, what's the solution? For the longest time, until I got this in my mind, I got a 3x5 note card, put it on my computer so I could see it when I'm, every day, what's the solution? What's the solution? Because it's so easy to go into what's the problem. To your record, I love this quote. Where your attention goes, your energy flows, and your results show. Where your attention goes, your energy flows, your results show. Once again, what you focus on is what you get back. I think one of the greatest lessons I learned from my cancer adventure. See, one of the things, I'm a communication major, and I realized something. Let me ask you this question. So we're a small group, intelligent group. What's a word? Words. What are words? Okay. Even simpler. On the most simplest definition, what are words? The most base level. Even simpler. Words are just a collection of A, B, C, D letters. Letters, right? But think about how emotionally charged we can become under a certain sequence of letters. There's a Jewish proverb that says, there's life and death in the power of the tongue. As leaders, are you speaking words of encouragement, words of possibility, words of hope? Or are you caught in that negativity cycle, and unfortunately, the feedback was less than positive? I'll give you an example. So I had this doctor who I named Dr. Doom. And I'm sure we all have had these Dr. Dooms. These are the people that brighten the whole room as soon as they leave. How many have some relatives like that? You don't have to raise your hand. And I called her that because what happened was, so I was diagnosed 9/11/2002. How crazy is that, right? 3 months, 3 hospital stays, 3 rounds of chemotherapy. I'm in remission. Doctor said, Matt, 80% chance the cancer will never come back. Now, in college, I was into bodybuilding, and my hero was Arnold. And I wanted to move to California, get pumped up. So I was a certified personal trainer. I was into weights. This is my whole life. Got the cancer, beat the cancer. Now I feel like Rocky Balboa, right? I knocked cancer out. I can do anything. And, well, 7 months later, after Dr. McNamara told me 80% chance the cancer would never come back, it came back. Had to go back, get remission again. That's when they said, Matt, you need a bone marrow transplant. Still waiting for a donor. January 2004, started having massive headaches. Like, it felt like a Mack truck was parked on the top of my head. So I knew something wasn't right. Went to KU Medical Center to run some tests. A little bit after 1 o'clock, January 2004, into the room for the first time walked Dr. Doom. I remember like yesterday. She walked over to my bed and she, those stools they have, those stainless stools. What do they call those in the hospital? They have a name for them? I don't know. Oh, stools? The technical name, stools. Typically in the hospital they have like lots of, all right. A stool's a stool. I don't know why I remember that. I remember that so vaguely. And very bluntly, she said, Matt, the cancer's come back and it's spread to the fluid in your brain. Now, I really try to have a positive attitude. Some days better than others, but I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I'm going to need a brain transplant. Now, I'm still looking for a donor. Life's crazy. Life's unexpected. And then she said, Matt, you have a less than 10% chance, age of 30. And she got up and she walked out. Which in hindsight, I'm glad she left because I didn't need that negativity in my life. But how often do we come across these Dr. Dooms? One of my mentors, Les Brown, great motivational speaker, and he said this is so powerful. He said, Matt, someone else's opinion of you does not have to become your reality. And how often do we buy in to the Dr. Dooms? And what I'm saying is, what a great position to be in when you can be like Nurse Margot instead of Dr. Doom. So when I turned 40, because she said less than 10% chance living to 30, when I turned 40 a couple of years ago, I went to the grocery store and I got me a bottle of wine to celebrate. I know it's a little bit different in Alaska, but it's been a long time since I've been carded. And so I go to the checkout line. She said, sir, can I see your ID? I was like, best birthday present ever. It's been a while since I've been carded. And I'm feeling really good about myself, reaching into my wallet, get my ID. And she says, oh, never mind. I see gray. So I discovered this new product. It's called Just for Men. You just got to laugh at life. But then I thought about this. What a blessing to have lived long enough to get some gray hair. You see, I think one of the greatest lessons I learned from this whole cancer adventure, I don't call cancer survivor, cancer conqueror, because words are powerful. Words have meaning. Words have emotions. And words can encourage us or words can hold us back. But one of the greatest lessons I really believe is, while we can't always control what happens to us, we can't always control the circumstances, the industry. I mean, if no one believed that before, we definitely believe that now. The world we live in. But here's the message. Here's the hope. No matter what happens to us, we always have this choice how we will perceive it. And that's a powerful thing. I'm a big reader. And one of my favorite books is Man's Search for Meaning. I don't know if anyone's had the privilege of reading that book. Do you recommend it? Yes. Yes. He was a Jewish psychiatrist placed in a Nazi concentration camp, lost his whole family. And while he was in a concentration camp, he wrote this book. At one time, they found his manuscripts and destroyed it. He had to start all over. But in that book, he writes of experience, and I recommend it, $10 on Amazon. Something, you all have Amazon here? You have Prime? You get it by the end of the day. I don't know. It takes 2 weeks for Prime? Okay, we're not in Kansas anymore. I don't know even. I like to laugh. But no, I recommend this book, Man's Search for Me. It's a quick read. But in here, one of my favorite quotes of all time. He said, everything can be taken from you. I mean, he's writing this in a concentration camp. Everything can be taken from you except one thing. The last of your freedoms. To choose one's choice in any given set of circumstances. Now that's going to be a lot easier to, in theory, versus practice. After my bone marrow transplant, I had this dream. I wanted to be this motivational speaker, do what I'm doing right now, and share this story and just offer people some positivity, some inspiration. And I started out in the rubber chicken circuit. Anyone ever heard of the rubber chicken circuit? So this is where you go around to all these service clubs and you get paid a chicken dinner. And many times it's not the best, so they call it the rubber chicken circuit. It's like Rotary, Kiwanis, Lions clubs. And I drove around, so I remember I had this Dodge Stratus, and I'll drive around Southern California. Now this is before GPS. Y'all remember like MapQuest? So beforehand, I'd go and I'd print off on the computer. And if you miss a turn on MapQuest in Southern California, whoo, good luck, right? It was wild. But I remember I had, so you remember the tape cassettes, and then you got a CD player that you had like a tape in there, and you could listen to CDs? Well, I had one of those, and I had this CD by this gentleman, Keith Harold, the greatest motivational keynote speakers of all time. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. But I played that tape over and over and over, Southern California, driving around to all these crazy talks. But two things I want to share with you, I've never forgot. It's always stuck with me. And perhaps it will stick with you and make a positive imprint in your life and something you can pass on to someone else. And the first one is this, if you would please, take a big deep breath in, breathe out. How big a check would you write for that? Priceless. I don't know how many times when I've been stressed out, and I said, Matt, just take a breath in and breathe out. I said, Matt, you were told by a doctor less than 10% chance of living. You had cancer in your brain, and you woke up today. But once again, it's so easy, at least for me, to get caught up in all the negativity that I forget how good life is in this moment. Another thing I learned from him and I adopted, and it's my philosophy for life. I want to encourage you before I share it. Let me ask you this. If you don't already, perhaps you begin to think of one. What's your philosophy for life? One sentence. If you could leave to your kids, your grandkids, if you could leave to the world, what would it be? One philosophy. One sentence. Yes, sir. Woo, to serve others. Actually, that's part of my talk later on, but yes, exactly. Isn't that what it's about ultimately as leaders? You probably heard this servanthood leadership. Serve others. Anyone else? Are you in Rotary? Okay, exactly. Great organization. Okay, anyone else? Your philosophy. Anyone else? Ski fast and take chances. Love it. Are you a skier, I assume? Kind of. Never kick a cold dirt on a hot day. Okay. We're getting out of control now. Oh, past president. Okay, of this organization? The past president of this organization said that? No. I'm just oh, okay, right. All right. Oh, that's great. Anybody else? After that, how can you follow that? Let me show you what Keith Harold said so many years ago that stuck into me. So simple, but so life-changing. And I truly believe it wasn't for this philosophy, this quote, this idea, I wouldn't be here today. And here it is. Lighten up, don't tighten up. Lighten up, don't tighten up. Reminds me of the study of, I found in Good Housekeeping, the average 4-year-old laughs or smiles up to 400 times a day. Curious, how many of you have kids? How many have ever seen a kid? By the time they reach the age of 30, that number drops to 15. And think about how many people, just like Nurse Margot gave to me, just need a smile. And I think the reason why it goes from 400 to 15 is because what happens as we get older, we get caught up in the dead past or the imaginary future. And we miss out on this moment. And all we ever have is what? This moment, this present. What a precious gift. And how fast it goes. You see, yesterday is a canceled check. Tomorrow is a promissory note. I'm amazed as a communication major, undergraduate, how often am I talking to somebody and they're talking back to me and I'm not listening, I'm thinking about what I'm going to say. No one's ever experienced that, right? And I think these whole devices as phones, we live in this ADD culture. I think one of the greatest blessings, look at Alaska, the opportunity. I think for me, nature reminds me of just to be in this moment. But this great, grand mystery called life that we get to be a part of that goes so quickly. One of the things in positive psychology, there's two types of people. People with high hope and people with low hope. Now, of course, the people with high hope, they're more resilient. They're able to achieve their goals because when they have setbacks, they look for different paths. And they found one of the biggest difference between high hope and low hope is self-talk. And one way that you can be a high hope person is through positive self-talk or positive affirmations. And so I just real briefly want to give you my all-time go-to favorite. And you probably heard it before. It's very common, but I think for me it's just, perhaps it's one of those things, common sense but not common practice. And my all-time go-to favorite affirmation is, I'm too blessed to be stressed. If you would please repeat after me. I'm too blessed to be stressed. And here's another one. I'm too grateful to be hateful. Because once again, what you focus on is what you get back. Here's the reality. Every single day, we experience more good, more positive, more blessings than negative. Let me give you an example. The average person over 100,000 heartbeats every single day. How many would agree that's a blessing? 100,000. And how many times do I forget about that? Every single day, the average person over 26,000 breaths. Once again, a breath, a blessing. Every single day, you and I are given 86,400 seconds. 86,400 seconds. At the end of the day, they're gone forever. So, real quickly, you all good at math, right? Not so much. Finance, right? You're good at math? Or maybe not. I don't know. Maybe I'm just assuming. Real quickly, someone get their phone out if you want to. Just add up these numbers. So 100,000, or you can do it in your head maybe. 100,000, 26,000, and 86,400. And we have that number just 212,000. Is that, someone concur? Is that what you got? Okay. No. So think about that. Your breaths, the seconds in the day, and your heartbeat, over 200,000 blessings every single day. Now, according to positive psychology, the number one predictor of happiness is relationships. I also believe, this is me personally, the number one cause of stress is relationships. But think about it. Now, if you would please, everyone, I don't want too much of this, but raise your hand. This is important. Raise your hand if you have at least 5 people you love or care about. At least 5. So 5 times 200,000 is what? Well, over 1 million. He's like, wow. I was like, yeah, to the dot. So if you have 5 people you love and care about, their heartbeat, their seconds, their breaths, that's over 1 million blessings every single day. Think about that. But I forget a lot of times because I get caught up in the wall, the stresses, the negativity. And I got to remind myself. Reminds me of this back in the day, legendary speaker, Zig Ziglar. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Zig Ziglar, one of the most famous motivational speakers. And he used to do these back in the 70s called positive mental attitude rallies. They go across the country spreading positivity. And there was this newspaper reporter who was somewhat critical. Imagine the media being critical. Oh, I have so much I want to say about that. But anyways, She asked him, she said, well, if this motivational stuff works, why do you keep doing it? And if anyone ever knew Zig, he was such a gentleman. He said, well, ma'am, we look at motivation a lot like bathing. We recommend you do it daily. I love it. Because here's the reality. We can be positive today. We can be of hope today. But tomorrow something can throw us off so easily. And I'm not sure, as leaders, we have that, what's the word I'm looking for? That privilege not to be on top of our game. Because we have responsibility. I'm not saying you have to be, every day it's got to be like, Pollyanna, perfect. But to realize, reminder, just the fact that we woke up is a blessing. And how important it is that once again, we can't control the circumstances, but we can choose how we see it. For example, the age-old question, is the glass half empty or half full? No, what do you say? How many are half full? All right. How many are half empty? Okay, very good, thank you, very honest. Sometimes, how many have no idea? I would suggest this. The glass is either half empty or half full, but 100% full. 50% with water, 50% with air. All I'm saying is, it's not what happens to us, it's how we perceive it. Let me give you an example. So my most life-changing day was September 11th, 2002. I was a senior in college at Emporia State University, Emporia, Kansas. I always like to check. I know we're a long ways away, but has anyone ever heard of Emporia, Kansas? Y'all heard of Kansas, right? Well, Emporia, Kansas is actually the founding city of Veterans Day. And it's a little town about middle of Kansas, small town, small university, and once again, I was into bodybuilding. September 11th, 2002, what happened was I started my fall semester, something wasn't right. Had a sore throat that wouldn't go away, and I was sleeping up to 16 hours a day. At one 24-hour period, I slept 23 hours. I thought I had, you want to guess? Mono. Thought I had mono. Anyone ever have mono? Thought I had mono. Going around campus, So I go to the doctor, get test results, come back negative. He said, Matt, we got to run some few tests. You're okay to go home a little bit after 1 o'clock. 9/11, 2002, my phone rang. It was my doctor. And you all know when the doctor calls you at home, it's not good. He said, Matt, I've got some good news and some bad. You're sicker than we thought. And I thought to myself, I sure hope the good news isn't that he switched to Geico and saved a bunch of money. Once again, lighten up, don't tighten up. And he said, Matt, he said those words no one wants to hear. You have cancer. And then he said this, and I think this, what a mark of a good leader. Because the reality is in this life, in this industry, as a leader, sometimes you have to deliver less than pleasant news. And I'm sure the last thing that Dr. McNamara ever wanted to do was to call a senior in college and tell him those words. Isn't it interesting? As hard as that call was for me, I wonder how hard it was for him. But here's what he did, and here's a sign of a great leader. He said, Matt, here's the good news. He said, you can get through this. It's possible. You see, he delivered that necessary message because I had to start treatment right away, diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. But he gave me hope. He gave me encouragement. Unlike who? Dr. Doom. And I wonder sometimes if Dr. Doom would have been my first doctor, if I'd be here today. This is why I flew you know how far I flew from South Carolina to get here. Y'all know how far that is? I mean, it's not that far, but why? Because it's pretty far. Because I realize the difference that you can make. Each one of you to be more like Dr. McNamara and encourage you versus a Dr. Doom. This is solutions. This is how we change society. This is how we change the world. I was going to say something so profound, I just forgot it. Lighten up, don't. See, I got to put that in your subconscious. I think we live in this, not the information age, the information overload age. Am I right? Am I right? Especially, well, you all do. Bombarded. Doctor, it was so profound, but it's okay. Dr. McNamara gave me those words of life. One of my favorite quotes of all time. Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. It's this. Every adversity, every heartache, every failure carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. Before I ever got sick, I read that book. When I was diagnosed with cancer right around 2000, 2002, that time frame, the majority of Americans read less than one nonfiction book a year. At the same time, watched over 30 hours of TV a week. And the number one TV show that time was Jerry Springer. So imagine if you're watching 30 hours of Jerry Springer. And I think back, imagine if I had never read that one quote from that one book. Because when I laid there in the hospital that first night, St. Francis, Topeka, Kansas, I'd forgotten all about that quote until laying in that bed, that quote came back up. I just had a guy email me the other day. He said, "Matt, I heard you 10 years ago, and something you said just came back to me." You see, I think in a way, and I look at myself kind of like Johnny Appleseed. You all know Johnny Appleseed? Not personally. You know him personally? Wow. We don't. He'd plant the seeds and never see the harvest of the trees. I've been doing this for almost 15 years, going to plant these seeds. You see, what I realized today, that I'm here to plant a seed, something I have to say, something someone's going to say today. Because ultimately, it's not what we know, it's what we do. I laid there in that hospital bed, and I visualized this victory. And here's where my whole life changed. Because when I was first there in the hospital bed, I was asking the question, why me? Why is life unfair? What did I do to deserve this? But it changed when I asked a different question. What's the good that can come from the bad? And I laid there in my hospital bed September 11th, 2002, and I visualized this victory, that someday, somehow, somewhere, for someone, some good will come from my experience. And almost 20 years later, it's brought me here today in Anchorage, Alaska. I mean, I woke up today and I was like, what day is it? What time is it? Where am I? How did I get here? But here's what I realize. I truly believe this. Out of your mess comes your message. Out of your test comes your testimony. And from the wounds come your wisdom. And from your scars comes your star. And I believe that for whatever reason, somebody here today, somebody watching, needs to hear something I have to say. In our remaining short time together, I want to give you three choices. Three choices. We've already been talking about them, but I want to identify them. I want to anchor them. Three choices to develop what I call your marathon mentality. And your marathon mentality is a mindset to push through the walls of negativity, setbacks, and obstacles so you can cross your finish line and achieve your victory. And I want to extend this to those you lead, to those you manage. Help them develop their marathon mindset, mentality, so they can push through the walls of negativity, setbacks, and obstacles. You see, what happened was after Dr. Doom gave me that most pleasant news of the cancer spreading to the fluid in my brain, they put a special device in my head called Ommaya Reservoir. Anyone familiar with the Ommaya Reservoir? So basically, because of the blood-brain barrier, it's a port they put in your head to measure the chemotherapy. Well, it got infected, so now I have an indention. So if we have time at break for $5, I'll let you touch it. Isn't it great? I like to laugh about that. Got a hole in my head. Life. This got infected. When my kidneys began to fail, temperature rose over 104 degrees. Valentine's Day 2004, I slip in an unconscious state. 2 o'clock in the morning, into the room comes Dr. Doom. Now, I'm completely out of it, but I was told later she assessed my condition. She walked out to the nurse's station, and she told him, call Matt's family and friends. He's not going to make it through the night. But see, let me tell you a little secret. What Dr. Doom didn't realize. You and I, we had an appointment today. I have some goosebumps. This mystery of life. In the same way you and I, see, you have certain people meant to come across to serve them. To be like a Nurse Margot. And I came out of the unconscious state, and I remember I was sitting in a hospital bed, and I'm dazed, I'm confused. I don't know what's going on. I look down, and my tennis shoes are untied. There's a physical therapist. There's my dad. My dad, he walks over, and just like when I was 5 years old, he reached down and tied my shoes. A 25-year-old man. I couldn't tie my own shoes. You know, as I think back on that, if only they would have been Velcro, that would have solved the whole problem. This morning when I tied my shoes, that's a victory. That's a blessing. How many times do I forget the little things? You know, I read something recently. Someone said a blessing was you go to Starbucks and that first little, you shake up your drink. It's little things. And after they tied my shoes, they helped me to stand up. And once again, I knew I was supposed to do something. I couldn't remember what it was. They took my left arm and put it around the physical therapist. Took my right arm, put it around my dad. Took my left leg, picked it up, put it in front of my right. My right leg, picked it up, put it in front of my left. One by one, as I had to relearn how to walk. And that day, I didn't even go 5 yards, and I was exhausted. They got a wheelchair. They put me back in the wheelchair, wheeled me back to my hospital room. Now, once again, just a few years earlier, I was like the Mr. Bodybuilder, certified personal trainer. Couldn't go 5 yards. And I laid there in a hospital bed, and I was defeated, and I was in negativity. I still needed a donor and a bone marrow transplant. But then there was a little voice, somewhere in the back of my head that said, why don't you do a marathon? I'm like, marathon? And to this day, I'm pretty sure it was all the medication they had me on. 26.2 miles? I couldn't even go 5 yards. But I thought about it. If I could do a marathon, that would be that's like the greatest endurance event. And that day I laid there in my bed, and it's the first choice I want to give to you, developing your marathon mentality for yourself and for those that you lead. You got to visualize your victory. You got to visualize your victory. There's a timeless truth that says, where there's no vision, the people perish. And I think more than ever, so many people are lost and confused. And they're looking for someone like you to provide a vision for their life. I laid there in the hospital bed and I visualized my victory of running a marathon. But let me ask you this. If all I did was lay there in my bed visualizing running a marathon, would it ever happen? No, comes the second choice. And the second choice, please repeat after me, take action. Please repeat after me, take action. Because ultimately it's not what you know, it's what you do. It's not enough to provide the vision for your people, but you've got to help them to take action. How do you run a marathon? 26.2 miles. One step. Just curious. I always like to ask this question. Anyone in this room have done a marathon? Wow, okay. Now, my excuse was because I had brain damage. I'm just curious. That's awesome. Whew. How many have you done? Wow. Wow, awesome. You forgot how many? Wow, okay. How many have ever walked? How many walked from a park? Hey, how many of you, was I the only one that went to the other building? That was kind of a marathon. Visualize your. Okay, so we got to do, I know it's early in the morning, we're going to do some, so one of the ways we learn is kinesthetically, and I realized, so that's moving your body. I found this actually works. I'll run to the airport and I'll see people doing this, so I know it works. And perhaps a little bit hokey, but it's going to work. So when I say visualize if you would go victory, that would be like my whole highlight, unless I see a moose of coming to Alaska. All right, you don't have to, but if you want to. Okay, here we go. Visualize your victory. Not enough to visualize your victory. We'll do A for action. You got to take action. In order to take action, here's the third choice, developing your marathon mentality. If you would, just take your index finger, point to your head, and say, elevate your attitude. Charles Swindoll said the single most significant decision you and I can make on a day-to-day basis is our choice of attitude. You see, and you all know this, but as leaders, once again, the great responsibility of setting the organizational culture. How do you retain people? How do you create that environment? Elevating the attitude. I've talked to so many people, and you've probably been a part of it. You don't have to raise your hand, but how many have ever been a part of a toxic work environment with a toxic boss? Opportunity to do the opposite. Elevating the attitude. 2 years and 4 months after visualizing you remember, 2 years and 4 months after taking, and 2 years and 4 months after elevating my attitude, I made to the starting line of the San Diego Rock and Roll Marathon. Usually I get a big round of applause for that, but it's okay. No, I'm just playing, but seriously, no. But here I was. 22,000 other runners. I'm waiting for the starting gun to fire. My favorite song, Beautiful Day, is playing. And then the national anthem. And right before the starting gun fired, a little voice in the back of my head spoke up. Matt? Yes? What are you doing here? You don't have to raise your hand. How many know about this little voice? Don't you know only 0.1% of the world's population has ever completed a marathon? So for you all did a marathon, whew, amazing. You're still on medication. You're 1 year removed from chemotherapy. You can't do this. See, once again, the biggest challenge you or I will face, the biggest challenge that those you lead and manage will face are the limiting beliefs. The negative self-talk, the self-defeating inner dialogue. The biggest challenge your children will face, your grandchildren. And so I told that voice 2 words, hush up, bang, off we went. And what a feeling it was coming down that final stretch. I had gone 26 miles, and I never realized how far 0.2 miles could be. I was like, what? And I crossed the finish line. Victory, victory, victory. And they hung around this big old medal around me, and even though, let's keep it real here, I got like 18,000 to 158. I pretend like that was the Olympic gold medal. My girlfriend at the time, she ran up to me, we embraced, and she said, Matt, an 83-year-old man beat you. She's no longer my girlfriend, but we send her love. And then I was like, I'm never going to run again. One of my favorite quotes, Charlie Tremendous Jones. He said, you'll be the same person you are 5 years from now, except for two things: the people you meet and the books you read. That's so true. I met this couple, and their goal was to run a marathon on every continent. And I was like, wow, if they can do it, that sounds like a pretty good goal. So I set on this adventure to run a marathon on every continent. And in 2016, I completed a marathon in Antarctica, and then 3 days later completed one in Chile. 7 marathons on 7 continents. And I was like, I'm never going to run again. Just weightlifting. 2017, I'm on the internet, and I discovered this title that said, The Hidden Continent of Zealandia. So here it is. New satellite technology, and the area in the gray, that's all landmass underneath the ocean. And it fits all the major criteria. So here's all the criteria for an actual continent. It fits all the major criteria. So basically, the only part above water is New Zealand and New Caledonian. How crazy is that? I heard that we've explored more of space than we have of our oceans. So now it's considered the 8th continent. Now, some people say there's 7, some people say there's 8. So just to be sure, in 2018, I went to New Zealand to complete my 8th marathon on my 8th continent. And now I'm done running. I want to close with this. But before we close, I just want to are there any questions? Any questions online? Or do you all have any questions before we do the little final close? I'll let you think for a second. Let me ask you this. What's one thing you learned or one thing that you reminded that you can use as a leader? Y'all learn anything? Reminded of anything? Watch it. Okay, let me show you some pictures. This is just to prove it. Some people don't. So this is me, initially diagnosed, getting full body radiation. And I got gamma rays. Any superhero fans? Marvel? So the Incredible Hulk, he became that way by getting gamma rays. Did not happen for me. I was like, man, I was going to be like the Hulk. Going with my dad, get a full body. That's going in to get my bone marrow transplant. This is over the Maya Reservoir. They had like one of my favorite pictures is they actually have a scar of it. It's pretty crazy. And then there is how to walk. So very first marathon, San Diego. Rome, which was amazing because when you come down the final stretch, you go 3/4 around the Roman Colosseum. I was so pumped up. I saw that, had Eye of the Tiger on my headset. I look down and I see these 2 elderly men. You can kind of see in the picture, these guys right here with their fanny packs. They were in front of me, so I had a new victory, beat the senior citizens. I started sprinting. I was like, I gotta beat these guys. What's crazy about Rome, I had no idea, but being an ancient city had the cobblestone. So if anyone's ever imagined running on cobblestone, that was crazy, but fascinating. Then Tokyo, this Perth, Australia, Cape Town, has anyone ever had the opportunity to go to Cape Town? Such a beautiful city because it has like 2 oceans and the mountain. And Antarctica, or basically Alaska. And then there was Chile, and then that's in Queenstown. And it started because I visualized my victory. And I took that first step in a hospital bed, just wanted to take one step. Took that first step. My goal was to make it down the hospital hallway and back. And along the way, I just had to keep elevating my attitude. See, I show that not to impress you, but to impress upon you. What's not just possible for you, but possible for those that you lead. The greatest finish line I crossed was Mother's Day 2004. Dr. Ganguly walked in my hospital room. We fired Dr. Doom. And he said, Matt, I've been successful bone marrow transplant. I was recovering from it. He said, Matt, You get to go home. The first thing I did was I picked up the telephone and I called my mom. And I said, Mom, happy Mother's Day. I get to go home. And she said, Matt, this is the greatest Mother's Day gift ever. That was a gift given to me, my mom, and so many other people because of someone like you. And I realize you don't work directly with patients, but because of what you do, patients like me are able to benefit. So please never underestimate the difference that you make. I want to close with one last story and one last choice. I call it the ultimate choice, and that's the choice to serve. Each and every one of you are given unique talents and gifts, and through those, we can make the world a better place. Now, because the cancer, leukemia, spread the flu in the brain, after the successful bone marrow transplant, they wanted to do follow-up chemotherapy. What that meant was for 10 months, once a month, they did a spinal tap, the chemo up in the brain. And we all know the pluses and minuses. I had 10 of these scheduled, did 9 of them, everything was looking great. So I asked the doctor, I said, Doc, do I really need this last one? What's the medical literature say? He said, Matt, there is no medical literature. We never had someone who had what you had be here a year later. I was like, well, Doc, keep doing what you're doing. And I close with this. Once again, sometimes I wonder, why me? Why have I been so blessed to wake up today? So blessed to have a heartbeat, a breath. And the reason why I'm so blessed is the reason why you are. Because you have that unique and special gift. The world needs you more than ever. A smile, an encouraging word, hope, positivity. You truly are changing the world. You truly are making a difference. And it's been honored and humbled. And I'm so glad for this opportunity to come and see you face to face, and for those of you watching online to share with you, knowing I believe the best is yet to come. Thank you. All right, give Jesse again. Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate this. And I appreciate you. I was writing down so many of your quotes, and one of them that stood out to me was too grateful to be hateful. Too grateful to be hateful. And
let me share this. One more. I forgot about this. Learned from one of my mentors, Wayne Dyer. I really try to live by this. I think more than ever we need to live by this. He said, it's better to be kind than to be right. Ooh, I think that's what our world needs.